The hero of our story suffered greatly from bullying because of his injured leg, even to the point of losing his job. While he didn't know what someone like him could do in this world, a disaster occurred that changed everything, giving him a new opportunity to reach the top and prove himself to everyone. Our story begins with a young man named Yunho, who received the news of his dismissal from the company due to the economic circumstances of that period. The team leader, feeling nervous about breaking the news, gathered his thoughts and conveyed with deep regret what had happened. He explained that he wished Yunho could continue working with them, knowing how diligent Yunho had been over the past 2 years. Yunho replied that he understood the situation and would start packing his belongings in preparation to leave. His thoughts drifted back to 2 years ago when he began working at the company on a 2-year temporary contract. During that time, he had to prove himself in any way possible to secure a permanent position. Yunho gave his all, completing every task, no matter how challenging, just to achieve that goal. However, despite all his efforts over the 2 years, he was unable to secure a permanent position. The scene returned to the present, where the team leader told Yunho not to consider it a true dismissal, but rather what the company now called a restructuring. He emphasized that it was a company decision and asked Yunho not to take it personally. Yunho responded that he wouldn't take it personally and assured him that he held no negative feelings toward him. After that, Yunho silently counted to 3. As expected, the team leader's expression shifted from sadness to a smile, saying he admired Yunho's strength and ability to remain unaffected by such matters. Yunho thought to himself that he had anticipated this reaction. Noticing their awkwardness during his dismissal, he attributed it to their typical behavior. The team leader continued, smiling, saying that Yunho would succeed wherever he went despite his leg injury. He noted that Yunho was still young, full of energy, and had worked diligently over the past period. He then suggested they go out for lunch to lift Yunho's spirits and invited all the employees to join. However, one of the employees commented that Yunho might not be able to go because of his injured leg. Yunho looked down sadly and told the team leader that he wouldn't be able to go as the restaurant was too far. He stood up and asked them to go without him, saying he would eat alone. When asked if he was sure, Yunho confirmed, saying he had an appointment with someone, and then left. Yunho went to the rooftop restaurant of the building and sat alone to eat, as he didn't have any actual appointment. He had said that to avoid burdening the employees further. He looked up at the sky thoughtfully, saying he would miss this place. Yunho recalled when he was once the most promising athlete in South Korea. Unfortunately, he couldn't maintain that status for long due to a minor car accident before a practical exam, which left him disabled. Yunho expressed that all he wanted now was to run once more, to the point where his heart felt like it would burst, but he said such a thing was impossible unless he were born anew. Suddenly his thoughts were interrupted by a voice asking what he had been thinking about so deeply. Turning around, Yunho asked the speaker if she had been there long, but she replied that she had just arrived. The girl was Ho Ji-yoon, a temporary employee who had started working at the company a week after Yunho as a secretary. Ji-yoon asked Yunho what he had been pondering so deeply. He replied that he was thinking about the new place he would work at. Ji-yoon joked, saying there was no need to think about such things, and assuring him he wasn't about to be dismissed from the company. She was shocked when Yunho told her she was right, and that he had, in fact, been dismissed that very day. Ji-yoon immediately apologized, saying she hadn't known what had happened. Yunho reassured her that she bore no responsibility and that it wasn't her fault at all. Ji-yoon asks Yunho when he plans to leave his job in the company. He replies that he's still unsure, expecting the company to contact him soon with the details. Suddenly, both hear a voice echoing in their minds, announcing a new notification. Ji-yoon, confused, remarks that the voice seems to resonate inside her head rather than being a typical company announcement. The voice repeats, stating that a mission will begin shortly. Yunho asks Ji-yoon if she can hear it too, and she confirms she does. Yunho and Ji-yoon are not the only ones who hear the voice. Everyone present in the area can hear it. Another message arrives, informing everyone that the planet has been sold and will be restructured. However, no one seems to pay much attention to this message. Yunho comments that it's nonsensical gibberish. At that moment, a man calls out to Ji-yoon. Yunho recognizes him as Director Choi, the executive from Ji-yoon's department, accompanied by one of her colleagues. Upon arriving, Choi asks Ji-yoon why she is still sitting there when the lunch break is nearly over. Once again, the voice announces that the mission is about to start. Choi scolds Ji-yoon, expressing his disbelief that she is still affected by what he describes as nonsense. He continues berating her, saying that with her current work approach, she'll never become a permanent employee. He urges her to hurry up so she won't be late. Yunho intervenes, assuring Choi that there's no need to worry, pointing out that there's still about 15 minutes left of the lunch break, and that they won't be late even if they sit a little longer. Choi then asks if Yunho is the new trainee from the adjacent department, and rudely inquires if he's the one with the leg injury. Ji-yoon tries to stop him, but Choi continues, adding that he heard Yunho was dismissed, as expected. He remarks that with a flaw like his, Yunho should live more seriously than others. At that moment, Everyone hears a new notification announcing that the first mission is about to begin. It instructs everyone to enter the green zone that has appeared before them within the allotted time, warning that those who fail to comply will be restructured. A countdown begins. Choi comments that he doesn't fully understand what's happening, but he finds it intriguing. His companion remarks that this seems like an event organized by the company's gaming division. Choi agrees, commenting on how strange modern technology is, before leaving with his colleague. Yunho feels that there is something suspicious about this event. He notices Choi and his colleague mocking him, imitating the way he walks. Choi sarcastically suggests Yunho visit an orthopedic doctor for his leg, while the other jokingly adds that he should try physical therapy too. Yunho remains unaffected by the mockery, and Ji-Yun, noticing this, immediately apologizes to him, saying it happened because of her. Yunho reassures her that he's used to such things, but she insists that it's not something anyone should get used to. As they approach the green zone, Ji-Yun asks what they should do next. Yunho replies that they've reached the area, and there's no harm in entering to see what happens. Ji-Yun agrees, and the two move toward the green zone. She marvels at the zone's design quality, wondering if it's just a hologram. Yunho responds that he doesn't know, as such things are beyond his understanding. Ji-Yun then asks Yunho what he plans to do if he decides to leave his job. He replies that it's a good question, and that he will most likely start looking for a new job. Meanwhile, Director Choi and his companion are at the door, but when they try to open it, the door doesn't respond, angering Choi, who questions how such a thing could happen. The countdown ends just as Yunho and Ji-Yun step into the safe zone. Suddenly, Yunho feels a strange sensation, prompting Ji-Yun to ask if he's okay. When they look back, they notice bizarre things happening to the people outside. A notification then appears, announcing that the time for the mission has ended and that workforce restructuring will now begin. Choi and his companions' bodies begin to disintegrate. Ji-Yun is in disbelief at what she's seeing, and Yunho explains to her that everyone who was outside the safe zone had their bodies disintegrate and vanish. Afterward, a properties window appears before Yunho, asking him to select a reward for successfully completing the mission. Yunho is shocked by what he sees and reviews the information, finding that his health and physical strength are fully restored, except for the issue with his leg. He wonders if he can use the reward to address it. When he presses on the representation of his leg in the window, a glow surrounds it, and he receives a notification that the reward distribution is beginning. Yunho is surprised when his leg improves by only 20%. Ji-Yun approaches him and asks if he also sees the properties window. He confirms and feels relieved to know he isn't the only one experiencing this. Ji-Yun then asks if he has any idea what's happening. He responds that he isn't sure, but since the notification mentioned this being the first mission, it's likely there are more to come, and if they fail, they'll disappear like the others. Ji-Yun grows anxious and wonders who could be behind something like this. Yunho replies that he has no idea, but the only certainty is that a new message will arrive soon. As Yunho predicted, they receive a message informing them that the safe zone will change randomly after the next mission begins, giving them 5 minutes to prepare. Ji-Yun becomes increasingly tense and asks Yunho what they should do next. He tells her they must move quickly because the second mission will undoubtedly be more difficult. When she asks why he believes that, he explains that the notifications were clear about restructuring, implying that they want to retain only the most valuable individuals. If his theory is correct, the competition will be more intense than in the first mission, and it's likely that fights will break out among the participants. He adds nervously that these battles are inevitable, especially since everyone witnessed others being erased after failing. If that's not enough to cause conflict, people will fight for the mission rewards. Yunho then tests his leg and feels that it's much lighter, despite only a 20% improvement, and notices a clear change in his walking. He calls Ji-Yun and tells her they need to move now, thinking to himself that this is his chance to change his fate in this absurd restructuring. He tells her the first thing they need to do is search for anything that can be used as a weapon, vowing to do whatever it takes to survive. Ji-Yun remains tense, saying she doesn't know what they could find in the office that would work as a weapon, and asks Yunho if he has any ideas. Yunho reflects silently, admitting it will be very difficult to find something suitable for a weapon in a typical office. He then replies that he can't think of anything specific right now, and advises her to grab anything that might prove useful as a weapon on their way. Ji-Yun is surprised by Yunho's suggestion, and asks if she also needs to carry a weapon. He confirms, emphasizing that she must have a weapon to protect herself. He then adds that they will stay on the rooftop for the next 5 minutes, and if no safe zone appears there, they will immediately descend via the stairs. Ji-Yun is puzzled by Yunho's mention of using the stairs and suggests that the elevator would be better, but he explains that the stairs are safer because they might encounter problems if the elevator gets overcrowded or someone tries to disable it. Ji-Yun, still visibly worried, asks if Yunho will be able to manage the stairs in his condition. Yunho thinks to himself about how slow and painful his steps are, with every movement causing him significant discomfort. However, he is certain that if he can fully recover his injured leg, the situation will greatly improve. He then reassures Ji-yoon, saying that he'll be fine and will push through even if it feels like his leg might tear apart, determined to give his best effort until the end. At that moment, a notification announces the start of the mission, displaying a map showing the locations of the safe zones and giving them a time limit of 10 minutes. When Yoonho and Ji-yoon see the map, they comment on how well distributed the safe zones are and decide to head to the nearest one. They begin descending the stairs, with Yoonho visibly struggling due to his injured leg. Ji-yoon suggests they take a short break since they still have time, but Yoonho insists he's fine and there's no need to rest. Yoonho reflects inwardly, acknowledging that the situation is challenging but not comparable to the intense training he underwent before his injury. He feels elated to be able to sense his toes again and hopes the next reward will further improve his leg, perhaps even fully healing it. Ji-yoon informs him that they've reached the 19th floor. However, when they enter the area, they find it empty and wonder why. Moments later, people begin rushing into the safe zone. Of course, not everyone enters calmly. Fights break out as some try to take others' spots. Observing this, Ji-yoon realizes their predictions were correct, commenting on how everyone is fighting as they expected. Yoonho replies that he had anticipated a much worse situation. Ji-yoon expresses concern that they might not find a spot, but Yoonho reassures her that the safe zone can accommodate 100 people, while there are currently only about 50. Ji-yoon is astonished and asks how Yoonho knows the safe zone's capacity. He explains that he calculated it based on his steps. Ji-yoon doesn't understand his reasoning, so Yoonho clarifies that his stride is about 30 centimeters, and a single person can stand within that space. He adds that the safe zone is 16 meters long and 7 meters wide, and multiplying those dimensions gives 112, which is the approximate number of people who can fit inside. Ji-yoon is amazed by Yoonho's explanation and asks if he always calculates his steps like that. He replies that it's a habit of his, noting that when he was a runner, he used to measure distances, and this habit became more pronounced after his accident. Ji-yoon remarks that what he does is incredible, almost like he has superpowers. Yoonho, however, urges her to focus, saying they need to enter now as time is running out. He warns her to stay alert since they don't know what the people left outside might do. When they entered the safe zone, the area was extremely crowded. Ji-yoon commented that it was fortunate they managed to get in quickly. Yoonho advised her to stay cautious, and she assured him she would never let her guard down. Suddenly they heard a voice from outside pleading for them to delay the door's closure and let him in. Ji-yoon recognized the person immediately. It was her team leader. He noticed her and called out for her to come to him. Ji-yoon tried to reach him to help him get inside, but Yoonho stopped her, warning her not to act recklessly, as her attempt could cause others to push her out as well. The countdown timer appeared, with only 5 seconds remaining. The team leader shouted desperately for Ji-yoon to reach him before the time ran out. Ji-yoon rushed toward him, pushing through the crowd to reach him. When she finally grabbed his hand, the timer hit 0, but half of his body was still outside the safe zone. Ji-yoon tried to pull him in before the timer expired. She yanked him hard, causing them both to fall to the ground. She laughed nervously, remarking that she hadn't expected him to be so light and expressing relief that he had made it into the safe zone. However, when she opened her eyes, she saw that only half of his body was inside the safe zone. Shocked, she began screaming loudly. Yoonho quickly ran to her, pushing through the crowd to reach her. When he arrived, he tried to calm her down, but she was inconsolable, blaming herself and saying that if she had pulled him faster, this wouldn't have happened. Yoonho felt a deep sense of unease when a notification appeared showing the number of deaths, which had exceeded 1,000, leaving only about 700 survivors. He returned to Ji-yoon and asked if she could hear him, telling her he understood how overwhelming the situation was, but emphasizing that this wasn't the time to mourn, as the next mission would begin soon. He urged her to claim her reward and prepare for the next challenge, but she remained unresponsive. When Yoonho realized there was no way to snap her out of her state, he came up with a bold idea. He decided to use his current challenge reward to enhance her mental abilities, though he wasn't sure if it would work. He opened his properties window and experimented with using the reward in this way. The attempt succeeded, and after canceling the enhancement, he ran back to Ji-yoon. He asked if she could hear him and told her he had a request for her. He instructed her to open her properties window and use her reward to enhance her mental abilities. When Ji-yoon followed his instructions, a glow surrounded her. Yoonho worried that his plan might have failed and wondered what would happen next. Shortly after, Ji-yoon stood up, appearing much calmer than before. She told Yoonho she would quickly change her torn clothes and return. She left, and Yoonho remarked that this system was truly magical, as it was unnatural for her mood to change so drastically in such a short time. Reflecting on the situation, Yoonho noted that he had received 2 rewards so far, and felt the need to gather more information to determine his next steps. He opened his property's window and asked the system if it was possible to gain immunity from elimination in future missions, but the option wasn't available. He then asked if he could receive a gun or any other weapon as a reward, but this was also not possible. Yoonho smiled and told the system that he wasn't upset about all his requests being denied and that he had become extremely patient due to the life he lived with his injured leg. After that, he asked the system if he could acquire the skill of foresight or the ability to fly, but the system replied that this was not available at this stage. Yoonho was greatly surprised, as the system's words implied that it was indeed possible, just not at the moment. He then settled for the information he had learned so far and stated that whoever was responsible for these elimination tasks definitely had no intention of stopping them so easily. Afterward, he chose to heal his leg again, but this time, the healing reached 70%. In this condition, he could walk, though he couldn't run quickly. At that moment, Ji-Yun returned and found Yoonho stepping on his leg naturally. She asked him if he had used his reward to heal it. He replied that it wasn't fully healed, and that he would soon be able to treat it completely. They then received a notification that the new task was about to begin. Yoonho commented that these people didn't even give them enough time to talk. Ji-Yun looked for the nearest safe zone they could reach, which was on the 15th floor below them. Yoonho told her they needed to move quickly, as most people might have already arrived there. Ji-Yun glanced at Yoonho hesitantly, as if carefully choosing her words, and spoke in a calm tone, saying she wanted to ask him something. Yoonho, focused on the path ahead as they descended together, replied in a neutral tone that she could ask as long as they kept walking. She then told him that when the team leader's body was split in half earlier, he hadn't been surprised at all, while most people, including her, would have been terrified. She then casually asked how he had remained so calm. Yoonho thought for a moment, and then told her that, in hindsight, her perception of his reaction as strange was entirely natural. He explained that it was due to courage training he had undergone as an athlete in track and field. Continuing in a calm tone, he added that the bigger reason was that he had witnessed his parents' death in a car accident when he was a child. Ji-Yun lowered her gaze and, with a voice full of regret, apologized, saying she shouldn't have asked such a thing. Yoonho shook his head calmly and replied briefly that it was no problem. When they reached the door, Yoonho looked at Ji-Yun and told her that those who are alive must stay alive, and that he would survive no matter how strange the tasks were. Ji-Yun replied, saying they would survive together. Yoonho looked at her and smiled, wondering if he was beginning to develop feelings for her because of the past two tasks. Then, he opened the door and told her they needed to run to catch up with the others. As they descended the stairs, Ji-Yun hesitantly called out to Yoonho, her voice filled with concern, and asked what they would do if the place was crowded when they arrived. Yoonho replied, saying he hoped that wouldn't be the case, because if the place was indeed full, they would have to fight to secure a spot. But when they entered, the reality was entirely different from what they had anticipated. For the first time, they witnessed someone killing another person. A man holding a stick was hitting anyone who approached the safe zone, refusing to let anyone enter. Yoonho remarked that he had expected something like this to happen, but what he hadn't anticipated was that it would occur while the safe zone was still empty. At that moment, someone shouted from afar, saying that the person in front of them was crazy, that there was enough space inside, and that they did not understand what his problem was. Another person, with the same irritation, said that they could all enter, and asked how he could be so selfish. At that moment, the man exploded, telling them how they could talk about selfishness, when they themselves were always selfish, calling them all despicable people. He continued, still shouting angrily, saying that they always look down on people with temporary contracts, and that his life had become miserable because of them. He added that if they knew what he had gone through, they wouldn't act this way and give orders in such situations. He asked if he had said something wrong. Afterward, we shift to Yoonho, who said that the person speaking was from the Operations Support Department, and that he was Deputy Director Dong-suk. Ji-Yeon responded that he had joined 2 years ago to cover for Director On's absence, and that he was supposed to be discharged like them when his contract ended. Upon hearing this, Yoonho thought to himself that this man was in the same situation as he was. He then remembered that he had seen him before, and that despite his large size, this man was always bent over and often shy. People used to say he was very sensitive and irritable, and indeed, there was a reason behind his actions now. A person then appeared and shouted at Dong-suk, asking him what nonsense he was doing and how he could talk to him in such a way. This person was Dong-suk's manager, and he continued, saying how Dong-suk could be so ungrateful toward the person who had taken care of him. Dong-suk felt provoked by his words, hit him with the stick in his hand, and said he wasn't a pet for him to claim he took care of him. The onlookers were shocked by what they saw, unable to believe that he had actually killed his manager. Ji-Yeon said it was clear that this was too much, that the manager had been ready to exploit Dong-suk and then discard him, and that Dong-suk couldn't control his emotions, leading to him killing his manager. However, Yoonho responded to her, saying he didn't think Dong-suk had acted out of rage beyond his control, When Yunho looked at him, he noticed his eye twitching visibly, his breathing deep and rapid, and his hands trembling. It was clear that he wasn't accustomed to this kind of violence. When he looked at the objects around Dong-suk, he found ceramic shards that could be used as a weapon, as well as some potted plants he could throw at anyone. It was evident that he had thought about this plan for a long time. We go back to the moment when Dong-suk's manager shouted at him, throwing his work on the floor and ordering him to rewrite everything from scratch, calling him stupid if he thought he would pay him for that foolish work. He questioned his experience, saying nothing of it was evident, while Dong-suk was holding back with difficulty from reacting to his manager's insults in front of everyone in the office. Back in the present moment, Dong-suk told everyone that they had all seen what happened to the manager, and if anyone tried to enter, they would meet the same fate. People were scared of him, and some quickly left the place to reach another safe area before time ran out. When Ji-yeon noticed what was happening, she asked Yunho what they should do now, as Dong-suk had lost his mind, and they wouldn't be able to reason with him anymore. But Yunho didn't respond to her and headed toward Dong-suk, thinking to himself that Dong-suk seemed so tense now that it might be the right time to calm him down a bit and then talk to him. Yunho was anxious because they didn't have much time. When he reached Dong-suk, he told him he wanted to talk to him quickly since they were both on temporary contracts, just like each other. He told him that what he was doing now was like digging his own grave, and Yunho continued calmly, asking him to think rationally. He began explaining that the people from different companies inside the building were certainly cooperating with each other to complete tasks, and it was natural for them to keep looking for allies who could stand by their side. He then spoke directly to Dong-suk, trying to make him understand his current situation, and asked him where he would be among these people if he continued behaving like this. Yunho continued speaking, already affecting Dong-suk's thinking. He said that since Dong-suk had killed his work manager, he would become the person no one wanted on their team. For anyone, having someone like that around was a huge risk, making him unable to be part of any group. Yunho added the final touch, telling him that everyone would see him as the most dangerous person in the place, and that they would need to kill him first to feel safe. He continued, saying that this was how people would perceive him, and in tasks involving competition like this, working alone might be a better option. But if the type of tasks changed in the next stage and became something else, it would be better to start building cooperative relationships now. He then looked at the manager's body on the ground and told Dong-suk that time hadn't run out yet, since he wasn't the only one holding a grudge against the manager. If he stopped this nonsense now, people would be able to understand the situation. He then asked what Dong-suk planned to do now. Would he let them all die and lose every opportunity to form alliances? Yunho was now waiting for Dong-suk's reaction, but Dong-suk completely defied his expectations. He bent down, picked up a vase, and threw it at Yunho. He spoke angrily, shouting at Yunho, asking what he thought he was doing, and how a despicable person like him could think of disrespecting him and talking to him that way. He asked if Yunho thought he was on the same level as someone disabled like him. Yunho seemed to get nervous, and thought to himself that he would have been done for if he hadn't calculated the distance properly. He realized that their time was almost up. At that moment, a properties window appeared in front of him, stating that it was now measuring the necessary data to unlock a skill. Yunho was surprised since this was the first time something like this had appeared to him. He heard Ji-yeon's voice calling him from behind, asking him to watch out for Dong-suk. Yunho, however, couldn't do anything, and was about to be struck by Dong-suk, but someone pulled Yunho back quickly before the stick could hit him. Afterward, this person asked Yunho if he was okay. Yunho replied, surprised since it was the first time he had seen him here in the company, that he was fine, and thanked him for saving him. They then stood aside, and the person introduced himself as Choi, saying that he worked at Hando Company. He then told them that he would leave now to reach a safe area, but Yunho told him that it was too late and that he wouldn't be able to make it in time. Choi asked him what he meant, and Yunho replied, saying that they might have missed the ideal timing for the rest of the safe areas as well, and that they shouldn't rule out the possibility that the same thing was happening below. Yunho then asked if Choi had served in the military before. Choi was taken aback, unable to believe how Yunho knew without knowing him, but Ji-yeon also noticed because his manner of speaking was very much like that of military personnel. Yunho looked at Ji-yeon and asked if she minded having Choi join their team. Ji-yeon asked if he had any plan in mind that he wanted to execute. Yunho already had an idea, so he told Ji-yeon that the first thing they needed to do was find something to block all of Dong-suk's weapons while entering. Ji-yeon asked him if he knew of anything they could use as a shield. Yunho noticed something that could be used, so he told Ji-yeon and Choi that they were now going to break through the area controlled by Dong-suk and enter the safe zone. We then moved to Dong-suk, where people were shouting at him, telling him that he definitely didn't plan on leaving them outside to die. A girl approached him, scared and crying, begging him to let her in because she didn't want to die this way. But Dong-suk replied to her coldly, asking what service she would provide him in exchange for letting her in, and that she surely wouldn't beg for her life with something trivial. but the sound of something interrupted him, and he looked towards the noise to see what was happening. He saw Choi and Ji Yeon pushing a board toward him, and Yunho told them that they had only one chance, and they had to succeed. At his first signal, they would use the board as a shield to get closer to Dong-suk, and at the second signal, they would flip the board and place it at the entrance. He added that even if the board broke, they shouldn't worry. All they had to do was keep pushing it, and he would cover for them. He then loudly told them that if they understood everything, they should move quickly. The people around were surprised by Yunho's idea, and how they used a board to get closer to Dong-suk. As they got close to him, he started hitting the board, calling them a bunch of crazy bastards. When his stick broke the board, Yunho told them to flip it quickly, causing Dong-suk to lose his stick. Choi was very close to him, so Dong-suk pulled out a scalpel and stabbed Choi with it. When Yunho saw what happened, he ran towards Choi to save him. He kicked Dong-suk to push him away from Choi, but Dong-suk managed to block Yunho's kick, mocking him and asking if he thought a cripple like him could make him back off. But Dong-suk couldn't finish his words as Yunho hit him with the broom he had, responding that he knew his kick couldn't do that. They all managed to get into the safe zone, and Yunho asked Ji-yeon to take Choi and move him out of the way quickly. Ji-yeon said she couldn't just leave him like this, but Yunho told her not to worry, assuring her that he would be fine. Then they heard Dong-suk's voice, saying how a cripple like Yunho could do this to him, looking at him with contempt. Dong-suk then charged at him like an enraged bull, and Yunho said that all animals felt similar emotions. Whether human or beast, when they were consumed by anger, they lost all sense of logic and used their whole body to express their emotions. Most of them charged at their target violently and without any thought, just like a bull charging at a matador. When Dong-suk got close to Yunho and was about to grab him, Yunho moved slightly to the side, causing Dong-suk to leave the safe zone. As soon as he stepped out of the safe zone, time ran out, and all the people around started cursing him, saying that everyone now would die because of him, and that if he hadn't been there, nothing like this would have happened to anyone. Dong-suk started screaming that this was impossible, that it wasn't real, until his body disintegrated and vanished. After that, a notification came saying the mission was successfully completed and that each of them could claim their reward. Yunho said that last time when he used the reward, his leg healed by 70%, and now it should be fully healed. When he used his reward, his leg indeed healed 100%, and he was extremely happy. He finally said that his leg was moving smoothly again, without any discomfort or delay in its reaction. Ji-yeon went to him and asked if his leg had fully healed now. He replied that it was true, and that it had returned to how it was before. Ji-yeon was very happy and congratulated him on the recovery of his leg once again. Yunho told her it was thanks to her help, but she responded quite the opposite, saying she felt like she was a burden to him. Yunho thought to himself that the time for celebration was over, and that he was still just an ordinary human, while others might be getting closer to becoming superhuman by enhancing their bodies and skills, not just regaining what they had lost. Then Yunho and Ji-yeon heard Choi's voice, crying, so Ji-yeon quickly went to him and asked if he was okay. Choi answered that he was very happy to have met them, and that he felt this might be the end for him. Therefore, he wanted them to deliver his last words to his mother when they got out of there. But Yunho told him there was no need to worry about his wound because it wasn't deep, and the bleeding had already stopped. Choi was surprised and asked Yunho to repeat himself. Yunho told him that he could now stand normally. Choi said it was strange, and that the wound still hurt a lot. Yunho thought that Choi seemed like a cowardly person, then asked him if he hadn't used his reward yet. Choi replied that he hadn't used it yet. Yunho told him that if he was still worried about his wound, it would be better for him to enhance his body's healing properties further. He explained that using the reward to heal this minor wound immediately would be a waste, whereas improving his natural ability to heal wounds would be more beneficial. Choi was impressed with Yunho's idea and said that he was a genius for thinking of something like that, and then wanted to call him his big brother. Yunho seemed a bit puzzled by Choi's words and asked him about his age. Choi replied that he was 25 years old. Yunho and Ji-yeon were surprised by his response. Yunho said he was 28 years old, so Choi could call him his big brother, and Ji-yeon added that he was also a year younger than her. Yunho said that he thought Choi was at least in his mid-30s because of his appearance. After that, Choi told them that without them, he wouldn't have been able to do anything and would be dead by now. He then asked Yunho how they were preparing for the next mission. Yunho replied that they needed to wait until they knew what the next mission was, and during that time, he asked them to prepare using the mission rewards. Yunho thought to himself that they were now on the 15th floor, and since they were in the middle of the building, it would be easy for them to move around. More importantly, they needed to gather as much information as possible while they still had time, especially about the true nature of skill unlocking. After a little while, Choi's wound healed, and Ji-yeon told him that the wound had healed very quickly, and that once his healing rate increased, the wound recovered perfectly. Choi replied, also surprised, that the wound area had become completely clean, without any scars, to the point that he no longer even knew where the injury had been. Ji-yeon then asked why Yunho was acting this way. Choi answered that he also didn't know. All Yunho had said was that he wanted to check something quickly, but now he was running around the place continuously without any rest. After a little while of running, Yunho reached an important conclusion, which was that the message he had received wasn't just gathering physical data. Of course, physical data had the greatest effect on acquiring skills, and what he had been doing during that time was running around the office to get used to his recently healed leg. He noticed that the speed of data collection had increased to match his restored leg, with the percentage going from 12% to 87% much faster, and he also realized that psychological factors had a significant impact. He says that when the percentage reaches 100%, he might unlock a new skill and wonders what skill he will get. He says that if this were a game, he would choose an offensive skill to dominate a larger number of enemies. However, since he's in reality now, having a more practical skill would be better. Then they receive a new notification, stating that their last mission will be at exactly 3 o'clock. Ji-yeon's eyes fill with tears of joy, and she asks Choi if he heard the same thing as her. He replies, extremely happy, that he also heard it, and that the system indeed told them that this would be their last mission. But Yunho looks at Ji-yeon and Choi, who were overjoyed, and thinks to himself that it's impossible for this to be true, that the next mission will be the last one. He then opens his properties window and says that the system mentioned there was a next stage, and even if this mission was the last one, it would be impossible for them to offer rewards or skills. Ji-yeon calls out to Yunho, telling him that they need to go to the stairs now and wait for the mission to begin. Choi, with great enthusiasm, says that since this will be the final mission, he will give it his all. Before Yunho walks with them, he finds a pair of scissors and says he should take it with him because people in this mission will be more aggressive than before, and he needs to be ready for anything that might happen. The scene then shifts to them arriving at the floor where the safe zone is located. But as soon as they enter through the door, Ji-yeon and Choi look shocked, unable to believe what they're seeing is real. But Yunho says it's real, and that he expected it to happen, adding that this restructuring is no longer just a game. It's more brutal than any other game, like a completely real PvP scene. Seeing how difficult the situation was, Choi asks Yunho what they should do now, saying it's impossible to force their way into the safe zone given its current state. Yunho considers Choi's words, admitting that it's indeed impossible to enter by force, and that they need to be careful since they don't know what rewards the people fighting inside might have. One of them might have something dangerous. An idea occurs to him as he thinks of an alternative solution to get into the safe zone. He then calls out to Ji-yeon and Choi, pointing to a place behind the people, and tells them they will head there now and that they don't have much time, so they need to move quickly. When they arrive, Yunho grabs a ladder and tells them that he will climb it and stand above the display screen. Choi asks him what he plans to do once he's up. Yunho replies very seriously that he's going to drop the screen on the people, and if it falls forward, it will land exactly in the safe zone. The people inside will be hit, but they won't die. Ji-yeon and Choi are astonished by his thinking, and Ji-yeon says that by doing this, they will also be able to avoid a fight. Yunho replies that she's correct, although it goes against what the system wants. Then Choi tells Yunho that he's amazing as usual, but he asks him how he knew there was a ladder in this place. Yunho responds that it's just experience, and that in the old company where he used to work, there was also a display space, and they had a ladder in this place. Once they enter, Choi says that the place looks very chaotic from the inside. Yunho then points to Choi the part he's supposed to push, and tells them that as soon as the screen falls, they need to enter the safe zone quickly before time runs out. Choi takes a deep breath and pushes the screen with all his strength. The people who were fighting below look up as darkness suddenly engulfs them, wanting to know what caused it. People rush out of the safe zone quickly, fearing that the screen might fall on them. As soon as they stabilized on the ground, Yunho told them to run quickly and stand in the middle of the safe zone as fast as possible before the others could reclaim their positions. Yunho said, as he was entering the safe zone, that they timed it well and that there was no need to overdo the worrying, but to be ready for any unexpected changes. Something unexpected indeed happened. Director Park grabbed Ji-yeon by her hand and asked her what kind of foolishness she had just done. He continued yelling at her, saying that her job as a secretary was to serve him, and how dare she save herself only. He asked if she was the one who dropped the screen on them, and said that because of her, his leg was injured, and he couldn't enter the safe zone. He gave her an ultimatum, either take him with her, or they both die together. Ji-yeon pushed his hand, and Director Park fell. She was still running quickly to get to the center of the safe zone as Yunho had instructed, but Director Park grabbed her by her hair. He told her she wasn't going anywhere, and asked how she could abandon the person she was supposed to serve. But Yunho appeared and cut Ji-yeon's hair. He said it was good that he had brought the scissors with him, and we flash back to when Yunho was in the office looking for a weapon to use. He found those scissors as well as a small knife. He said that the knife was too thin and had limited use, and the scissors weren't intimidating unless opened, so he had to make something out of both. Returning to the present moment after Yunho cut Ji-yeon's hair, he kicked Director Park, pushing him back hard. He then left him and entered the safe zone, just as time ran out, leaving Park outside. Park's body started disintegrating, and he cursed them before his body completely vanished. Choi screamed as soon as he saw what had happened, to the point where Ji-yeon was startled by his voice. He apologized to her, not knowing what to say about her cut hair. The same went for Yunho, who was extremely nervous, saying that he had cut a girl's hair without even asking for her permission, and though it had to be done, it still felt strange. He was terrified when he saw Ji-yeon approaching him, wondering if she was upset about what he had just done to her hair. When Ji-yeon reached him, he didn't know whether to apologize or what to do. He was shocked when he saw that Ji-yeon wasn't angry. Instead, she asked him to cut her hair even shorter so that such a situation wouldn't happen again. He asked if she was sure about what she was saying now, unable to believe that she was laughing, and wondered how strong her mental fortitude must have grown to be in this state. He added that the scissors weren't in the best condition now, so he wouldn't be able to cut her hair at the moment. She asked about what had happened to the scissors, but Choi told her not to worry, and that he would find another pair for her. He moved leisurely, so Yunho told him that there were still people stuck underneath them now. Then they received another notification that the mission was over, and that the number of survivors was 16. Choi thanked them for helping him, but Yunho told him that he had done most of the work this time. Yunho was then shocked when he heard from the system that they had completed the tutorial stage, that rewards would now be distributed, and that the synchronization rate would increase slightly. Everyone present was visibly tense, saying that the system had clearly stated that this was supposed to be the last mission, and they were clueless about what was happening and who was responsible for this. But Yunho was the only one who had anticipated something like this would happen. Then they saw a girl coming out of the wall in front of them, and they heard the system's voice telling them that the projects had been activated by the administrator's authority, and the project's name was The Selection. When the girl emerged from the void, she found that the number of mission survivors was 16 people, and she seemed annoyed because that number was large. Choi said that this girl was still a child, probably no more than 11 years old, and Ji-yeon was surprised that she was floating in the air. But Yunho replied that their perception of age was meaningless here, and even without introductions or any explanation, it was very clear that this girl was the one in charge of the system and everything that had happened. The girl noticed that someone had dropped a screen to save the largest number of people, but someone interrupted her, asking about her identity and how she suddenly appeared from the void. She descended toward him and said her name was Haruna, then asked him who came up with the idea of the screen, adding that it was a very clever idea. Yunho was surprised and nervous as well because Haruna had reached that man very quickly, and he wondered if it was a skill that could be acquired from the rewards. Then Choi told Yunho that it seemed Haruna was looking for him, to which Yunho replied that they would wait and not speak until they saw what happened, and Choi told him that the atmosphere was full of optimism now. At that moment, they all heard a woman called Madame Yu respond to Haruna's question, saying that she was the one who came up with the screen idea. Another woman screamed at Madame Yu for intervening, even though she didn't know the real reason Haruna was looking for the person behind the idea. The security guard beside her added that Madame Yu always acted this way. Then Madame Yu replied hesitantly, saying she thought she might benefit if she said anything, but the other woman continued berating her because she wanted to take credit for something she didn't do. When Haruna heard them, she quickly approached them and asked Madame Yu with a very angry expression if she was really the one behind the idea. Madame Yu was very scared and told her that she was not actually the one behind the idea. Haruna got even angrier and asked why she had spoken if she wasn't the one. Yunho thought to himself, still anxious, that almost everyone felt the same. There was a coldness in every word that came from the girl, fear that arose from the frozen atmosphere she created, and the majesty that radiated from that small body. Back to Haruna, who grew bored of Madame Yu's attempts to justify her actions and told her to shut up. Then, she brought her finger close to Madame Yu, who was confused and didn't understand anything. Suddenly, they found that Haruna had exploded Madame Yu's head with just her finger. Haruna then said very coldly, as if she hadn't just killed someone, that the first thing she had to do now was to evaluate them, and that she had just erased someone, leaving 15 people remaining. Yunho felt worried when he heard her words, especially since she said that someone she had just killed had been erased, as if people's lives were trivial to her. Haruna continued, saying that the company's general policy required that every individual be met individually, but she was too busy to do that, so she would ask them all at once, and they should think carefully before answering. When Yunho heard her say that the company wanted to evaluate each of them, he wondered what exactly she wanted to evaluate. Then Haruna began asking if there were any athletes who would raise their hands, but no one responded. Then she asked if there were any celebrities, whether singers, actors, or anything else, but there was no response either. Afterward, Ji-yeon and Choi were asked why they were looking for this type of person in a corporate complex. Choi responded, saying that after what they had just seen, who would dare speak or even raise their hand? Haruna then continued her questions, asking if there was anyone with a global impact, like an artist who had created an amazing work or something exceptional. At that moment, Someone raised their hand and hesitantly asked if a YouTuber could be considered as such. Haruna then asked him sarcastically, also irritated, what he meant by that. The boy then retracted his words, asking her to forget what he had just said. Haruna responded with a clear threat that if he said something foolish like that again, he would have no one to blame but himself for what would happen to him. Haruna then continued, saying she expected not to find anyone here, and added that she would finish this matter quickly. She said she would distribute all the introduction stage rewards at once, and that during the introduction stage, the rewards were supposed to be distributed individually based on each person's characteristics. However, that would have been exhausting, so she decided to distribute them all at once and randomly. She then said that it seemed they didn't have any questions, and disappeared again as suddenly as she had appeared. Ji-yeon commented on what had happened, saying that Haruna didn't even give them time to think before disappearing. After that, they received a new notification that the new mission had now begun, and it was called The Arena. Everyone was puzzled because there were no details about the mission, no specific time, or a safe area to go to, leaving them confused and not knowing what to do. Yunho said that as he expected, the mission had changed from the beginning of this stage, and they had to be as prepared as possible. He added that if the game would revolve around speed and violence as it did previously, then the best thing they could obtain was flexibility. But now there was a new variable called the arena, and in such cases, when there was no way to predict the upcoming tasks, they needed to be prepared for all possibilities. Yunho then opened the properties window and said that choosing a safe reward with no risk was the best option in the current situation. Yunho was surprised by the new notification that appeared, saying that the reward had changed after finishing the tutorial stage, and that the reward level had increased, along with an important bonus point and a random box for new themes. Yunho was even more surprised when a real box appeared in front of him, and he noticed that when he brought his hand close to the box, it shook violently. He said that it seemed as if the box could explode at any moment, and he wondered to himself if this was a trap. But he heard a sound afterward, and when he looked, he found 2 people had opened their box. The box contained a lot of money. The girl started counting the money and told the boy that it was a lot. The boy, still shocked, replied that the money might reach 500 million won, and the girl asked him to quickly open his reward and see what he would get from the box. But Yunho had a completely different perspective, saying that this reward was worthless, because if the restructuring was happening everywhere on Earth, it meant that the civilization they knew had ended, and it would be very clear that this money would become just worthless paper. If the reward were a loaf of bread, it would have much more value than this money. Yunho said, as he prepared to open his box, that they needed things that would help them in the increasingly difficult tasks and the upcoming competition, and his priority was to get armor first, and then weapons. He then remembered Haruna, who was capable of cutting Madame Yu into pieces with just one finger. He said he didn't know if he would meet people like Haruna in the future or not, and that he had used his 3 rewards to heal his injured foot, and now he needed a strong reward to make up for the gap between him and others. When he placed his hand on the box, he wished for something good to come out. As for the others, they received swords and shields, but they weren't able to use them well. Choi got a full set of armor, and he was very happy with it. He approached Yunho to show him the armor, but Choi and Ji-yeon were surprised when they saw Yunho's reward, which was just a small stone. Yunho said that he couldn't do anything with that stone, and that things had gotten extremely out of hand. Choi and Ji-yeon tried to cheer Yunho up a little, telling him that this stone might be very rare or have unique properties. Then Ji-yeon got a dagger from the reward box, and Yunho told her that it seemed she liked the dagger. She replied that she felt very comfortable holding it in her hand. She added that it was the first time she held a knife other than kitchen knives, and Yunho responded, saying that this dagger was good and would be useful in many situations. Ji-yeon replied, saying she would now use it to adjust her hair since she had the opportunity, and Yunho was shocked by her statement, wondering how much her mental fortitude had grown to be able to do that. He said that things were still in their favor, as Ji-yeon and Choi got good items, and the only problem was with his reward. He didn't know how to use the stone and said it was pathetic, and that even if he threw it at someone, it wouldn't have much of an effect. After that, he tried placing his hand on the stone, wondering if it was really an ordinary stone, but when he touched the stone with his finger, it began to dissolve into him. When his body absorbed the stone, he received a notification from the system telling him that he was now absorbing diamond from abandoned mountains. Yunho felt fear from the sensation, saying it was as if his hand was turning to stone from the inside. When his body finished absorbing the stone, he received a notification that he had acquired a new skill called Petrified Skin. Yunho discovered that he could acquire a new skill after getting a notification that the hardening skill had been activated for him. The system informed him that the amount he absorbed was small, so the activation was initially limited. But he had acquired this skill as a reward, and this skill was completely different from what he had obtained before, as it gave him new abilities, such as hardening that could significantly enhance his defenses. However, he felt disappointed when he realized that its use was currently limited to just one finger. Yunho then wondered how strong this skill could be, given that the system was stingy in granting it to him, and he sat down on the ground. Choi was puzzled by what he was doing, and Ji Yeon asked if anything had happened. They were both shocked when they saw what Yunho had just done. He broke the ground with his finger, which now looked like stone. Ji Yeon asked if this was a new skill of his, and he replied that it was indeed a skill he had just acquired from the stone. He said that this skill could be useful in terms of offensive power and durability, but he started wondering how beneficial it would be while using just one finger. But then a new idea came to him, and he opened the properties window to see if he could improve the skills using the points he had just gained. It turned out that he could, but before the skill could be improved, the system asked him to choose the part where he wanted to add the skill. Yunho said he would use it on his thumb, so now he had 2 fingers that could use the hardening skill. They were then distracted by the voices of the 2 people who had won the money, arguing excessively. The girl wanted to buy a new house for newlyweds, but the boy told her that he wasn't thinking about marriage at all right now. The girl responded by saying that he had tried to take her money in the beginning, and now he was saying he didn't want to get married. Ji Yeon seemed surprised by what was happening and said that they used to work with them in the company. Yunho replied that they certainly worked together in the same office. Ji Yeon agreed, saying that he was right, and that they had been in a relationship, but kept it a secret that no one knew about. After that, they received a notification that the arena was now ready, and that the mission would begin immediately. They then felt the ground start to shake, and they couldn't keep their balance. It wasn't just a feeling, it was real, and soon after, the ground tilted sharply downward. Yunho ordered Choi to hold onto the pillar and never let go, no matter what. Yunho then noticed that Ji Yeon was being pulled downward, where fire awaited below, and if she fell into it, she would definitely die. Yunho quickly ran towards her, calling her name and asking her to grab his hand quickly. When Ji Yeon took his hand, Yunho used the hardening skill to anchor himself to the ground, then asked her if she was okay. Yunho asked her to hold onto his hand tightly and not let go, no matter what, assuring her that he would hold on to her as much as he could. He then heard Choi's voice warning them about a table falling on them. Yunho thought to himself, saying that if he let go now, they would fall into the fire, and if they stayed as they were, the table would fall on them. Suddenly, a notification appeared that a new skill had been activated, and Yunho felt surprised and happy. The system informed him that all the struggles and hardships he had gone through had turned into a new feature, and this skill was acceleration. Yunho said that anything would be good as long as he could get out of this difficult situation. He used the skill quickly without thinking. He then noticed that time had slowed down significantly, and the people around him seemed like statues. The scene shifted to after Yunho saved Ji Yeon and made her sit on the ground. He asked her if she felt okay, or if she had any injuries, but Ji Yeon was still in shock, asking Yunho what he had done. She remembered that they were holding hands, clinging to the ground, and the table was about to fall on them. Suddenly, Yunho let go of her hand and disappeared in front of her, then reappeared behind her very quickly. Ji Yeon expressed her amazement, saying that the speed with which Yunho moved was not natural at all. She curiously asked how he managed to move so fast, and Yunho replied that he wasn't sure what had happened, that the skill had appeared suddenly, and he used it without thinking, and now he would open the properties window to see the details. Ji Yeon expressed her amazement, saying that he had actually gathered enough experience points to unlock a new skill. When Yunho opened the properties window, he confirmed that the new skill was speed enhancement, and at its first level, it made every 5 seconds that passed for others feel like 1 second to him, allowing him to see others 5 times slower. Yunho noticed that if he leveled up the skill, he might be able to see others even slower than 5 times, and he said in amazement that if he could make it 50 or 100 seconds, he would have an ability similar to stopping time. Ji Yeon interrupted his thoughts, saying that the ground had returned to normal and had stopped moving. Yunho said that the ground was still shaking slightly, and Ji Yeon agreed, saying she felt like they were standing on water or something unstable. Yunho said that after what she said, he started to feel that the ground was shaking in the opposite direction. Suddenly Choi appeared, running towards them happily because they were both okay. Yunho responded to Choi, expressing his happiness that Choi held onto the wall as he was asked. Ji Yeon said that she felt like she was going to die this time. Then they felt the ground begin to tilt again. Choi seemed puzzled by what was happening and asked Yunho why the ground was shaking again. Choi noticed a change in Yunho's expression, and Yunho thought to himself that he now understood why the system named this mission the arena. He compared the situation to a scale that tilts when the two sides are not equal. Yunho remembered Haruna's words when she was distributing the rewards and said she wanted to finish the matter quickly, then looked at the ground and said it was perfect and flat. He thought that Haruna and her company saw no value in the people here and that they were planning to get rid of them all. When the ground started shaking, people ran, searching for something to hold on to. Yunho called out to Choi, asking him to run quickly to rebalance the ground. Stop when he felt it was balanced again. Then he addressed Ji Yeon, asking her to stay close to the wall. After restoring balance, Yunho said that the situation would have been very difficult since the balance was lost before the cooldown of the acceleration skill had ended, and he said it was a good thing that Choi noticed it quickly and acted to restore the balance. Choi called out to Yunho, telling him that the ground was balanced now and that they should stay still, but suddenly, he saw someone running beside him. Choi called out to him, warning him that sudden movement would cause the ground to shake again, but the boy didn't listen and continued running. Choi noticed that the ground started shaking again, but the boy looked very scared and said he couldn't stay still and wanted to get out of the place. When the boy approached the door, he noticed that the ground had lowered even more, and he was about to fall into the fire beneath. The boy started screaming hysterically, causing a problem for everyone. Choi felt tense, trying to find a quick solution because everyone would fall into the fire if the situation continued like this. Suddenly, Yunho appeared next to Choi and asked him to quickly head toward Ji Yeon, assuring him that he would handle the problem. The cooldown period for the acceleration skill ended, and Yunho used it to quickly move toward the boy who was about to fall into the fire. Everyone seemed surprised at Yunho's speed and how he got there so quickly. Then a person named Seong appeared, also flying in the sky, observing what was happening, and commented that there was an unexpected change in plans. The scene shifted to Haruna, who told Seong that she had warned him several times not to interrupt her while she was working. Seong replied nervously, saying that he came because the matter couldn't be delayed. He informed her that the mission in Area 107 was about to end, and that there were 13 survivors. Haruna seemed shocked, saying that this was impossible because the expected outcome for the mission in Area 107 was complete extermination. Seong mentioned that there was something unusual in Area 107, and Haruna responded, saying that there was indeed a clever person who dropped the screen in the safe zone to save as many people as possible. She smiled, saying that this person was very interesting, and she wanted to see him herself, asking Seong to send the Eye to monitor them.